Do you know where Chad is?
I don't know what that is.
You don't know this?
No idea.
Gosh, I don't. Sorry.
Not specifically, no. I couldn't say what bordering countries or anything.
Like Turkey?
You know where Chad is?
Who?
Do you know where Chad is?
No, I have no idea. What is Chad?
It's a country.
No, I don't know.
Chad. Is that like the Chad, the country?
Yeah.
I can say, I think I know where it is.
Who's Chad?
Oh, it's a country. Do you know where the Chad the country is?
Yes. It is in Africa.
Oh, I want to be right there right now. I know. You know what I mean, Chris? Oh my god.
Is there any normal picture?
Third world countries and just developing countries and just all of that. I really realized and we came to understand that importance that, you know, when we do share the gospel, it has to be in the context of their culture, of their day-to-day life.
Africa was the last place I wanted to go, actually. Eventually, my fiancée, Susanna, convinced me to go, and I read a verse at the end of Mark that really vanquished all my fears of just disease and just all those fears that I had dwelling up within me.
This was my second trip to Chad, and I decided to go back to Chad because of the children there. Just to have all those kids just focused on my camera and just seeing their eyes just light up so much just to see their own faces on the screen, on this tiny LCD screen. That was just a moment where I realized this is where I want to be, and this is where I want to do a lot of work.
I think the people that I met, Pastor Yang, Pastor Hemi, Pastor John, like, they were pretty unforgettable.
When he said that, I was like, Chad!
It's been around a month and a half since we've gotten back. Africa just seems like a lifetime ago. It just feels like it was a dream.
한동안 제가 혼자 살았어요. This is so cool.
스키로
찬이에요. 찬이? 네. 제이하고 찬이? 몇 살이야? 아, 잘 주무셨어요? 안 더우셨어요, 안에는? 괜찮았어요. 안녕하세요.
이쪽으로 가져와. 그럼 여기 안에서.
Would you do full-time missionary?
But I saw 2 missionaries that we met at the airport in N'Djamena, and then the little daughter, cute little girl. I thought, man, immediately I'm like, I could do it. I want to do this. I want me and my future wife to do something like this. And then, oh my gosh, it's the biggest lizard I've ever seen in my life.
So, what do you guys think about your first day so far? God truly gave me a heart for the pastors that we met there, which are the 2 missionaries that we stayed with, which is Missionary Jun and Missionary Yang.
그만큼 기독교적인 힘이 있기 때문에 지금 이슬람의 가장 큰 문제는 뭐냐면 북아프리카로부터 남아아프리카.
To see these pastors toil and struggle with each other and encourage each other every single day and take the gospel to remote villages and remote parts of Chad while having a family of their own. And they have sons and daughters and wives like in N'Djamena, but they go travel 8-9 hours or south of N'Djamena so frequently. And you have to imagine that this is not like America where you have paved roads and you have nice AC in your car, but this is Chad where sometimes during the year it reaches 140 degrees. This is sub-Sahara. But they do this with joy. They do this with so much love, and to say that they rejoice while they suffer for the sake of the church, I truly came to understand what that meant, what it really means to toil and rejoice in that suffering for the body of Christ.
Right next to the missionary center, Pastor Yang, he started a seminary. One of his students is Pastor Remy. Pastor Remy is the Chadian pastor that traveled with us the entire trip.
I am Pastor Remy Logoto. I am pastor in Mundu. I'm working like a pastor since 5 years now.
Hannah always said that. Hannah always told me and Sudanoni like their eyes are so light, and I was just like, how can I describe that to people? But it really is like seeing their soul and their heart through their eyes. They're so like hopeful and they have so much love, and I thought I was going there to help these people, but they helped me more love and see God's love.
What happened to this village?
So this village, they used to be Muslim, but they all met Jesus and came to accept Christ, and they ran away to this remote place.
Tabila is a village. They have not a church. They haven't good water to drink, and no hospital, and they have many malaria, and we want to help them for a church and teach them how They will protect their children or wife. Many of them are the fishermen.
They long for that close interaction. When we were ministering to the kids, there was like a huge separation between parents and kids.
Children in Chad are really looked down upon and they're really neglected.
Not a lot of affection. If you do something wrong, I remember seeing a kid get slapped in the face. I remember a kid being thrown down to the floor, like he was hugging his mom, and then she started crying, or he started crying, and then she just threw him on the floor. And then he just kept crying, and then the mom finally picked him up by the arm and hugged him again.
You know, us being there, showing them just a little bit of attention, their eyes just shone with so much love and so much, wow, are these people from another country really showing me this much attention? You know, it wasn't just us giving love to these kids, but these kids were giving their love back to us.
Why are you copying me?
Why are you copying me?
Hey, stop that!
Hey, stop that!
Why are you copying me?
Why are you copying me?
You want to follow me?
No,
I love Jesus.
Really? Yeah, then yeah, probably. So we bought a bunch of soccer balls that we're going to take over to Chad, and we're planning on giving 2 to each village, and we're so excited about it. But when we got to Chad and we talked to one of the missionaries about it, he said, you can't just give the soccer balls out because they're so prized. They wouldn't be able to use it in a game of soccer because people would be fighting over it so much. So he said, we present it in kind of like a ceremony, and we present it officially to each village leader. This group of 20 men, I remember, just lined up. They lined up in one line, and the village elder was in the middle, and he had the soccer ball and he was holding it. But you can see each of the men that were lined up just staring at the soccer ball, and the men closest would just reach out their hand and just put their hand on it just to get the feel, just to see how a real soccer ball feels. And they're just so like, this is like worth like gold. It looked like to them, it was gold to them. And then they said thank you in their language, and they started walking up to us, and they all bowed, Korean style. I don't know if they learned it from the missionary, but they all bowed Korean style, saying thank you in their language. And then they walked back and they started their game, and it was honestly the most exciting game of soccer for me. I mean, World Cup, you know, to see these men play for the first time with a real soccer ball was just one of the most exciting memories that I have from Chad.
What were you doing there?
Just talking to our nurse. Our nurse.
Take a rest for a while.
We're just talking about just the medical aid. I want my eyes to be opened. This nation is the most powerful country in the world. Economically, we're rich. We're the most rich nation. Range in terms of power, we're the most powerful, you know. And so, growing up as an American, it's such a blessing. But at the same time, you know, I think about God. You know how He created everything. He just didn't create America. He created all the nations. As a Christian, like, we need to think about that. We need to think about our brothers and sisters in different countries, because we are united through the blood of Christ. We are a family of God, and so we need to think like that. I can really experience Christianity on a global level. That's so needed.
I love Jesus.
I love Jesus. I love Jesus. I love Jesus.
Continues to show me His love. The biggest way He taught me was through the children in Africa, and the children, they're just so pure there. They love you, and they just seek that love.
Ubiya
They taught me so much. How truly spoiled I am, where I can just literally go and get cold water anytime I want. And they have nothing, but they're just so happy, and I feel like their hearts are so untainted. They're just so pure. The littlest things, they're just so amazed by it. And when I see that, I just saw how God looks at us and truly sees us in that way. He sees Jesus in us, you know, and he loves us because we're covered in Jesus' blood. I don't think there was any other way that God could have taught me that lesson, but by going to Africa and showing me just firsthand just how much love and joy that's in their heart.
They came to us and they started high-fiving all of us. This little 4-year-old girl had a bottle on her back, and she had this scarf wrapped around and the bottle, like she was carrying the bottle like a baby. I was thinking, oh, that is so adorable. And so we started walking, and the missionary took us into this small building, and it turns out that was the orphanage.
36명의 아이들을 잡고 여기 6명의 나이고
This orphanage?
The age, yeah. The age
How
of the
old?
children. From 1 month old, so infant, to 18 years of age.
Bonjour. Bonjour.
And the pastor of the orphanage was telling us that this little 4-year-old girl that we just saw was one of the girls that was brought in by someone. She was abandoned by her father, who was at the time physically and sexually abusing her. And that was the first story that we heard right as soon as we got into this orphanage. The pastor of the orphanage told us that this little baby was 4 months old, and this little baby was left in a trash can.
My friend did this listening prayer with me a couple months ago, and through that prayer I just saw this vision. Jesus was cradling me like a baby. His eyes, they were just staring straight back into mine. I was so engaged in his eyes because it just transcended so much peace. That peace was so crazy. I couldn't stop staring at his eyes. I knew there was a deeper reason why he revealed that vision to me. And when I went to Africa, I got the chance to cradle this baby. When I was cradling her, she just stared straight back into my eyes. And although there's no way I could speak her language, I just knew that what I had to do was just show her that everything's gonna be okay with my eyes, and that she can have some peace, and just show her how much she's loved through just cradling her and just staring back at her. And I just felt the exact same way I felt in that vision that Jesus showed me.
It was only a year and a half ago where I came to understand the depth of the hurt I received from my father leaving me. God's been really healing me in the areas that was lacking from the lack of a father. On the drive back home to the missionary center, these memories were being stirred up again. And the pain that I felt from the loss of one parent, I couldn't imagine these children having no parents. I just connected to these orphans. Just seeing the love of that pastor and the pastor's wife, just connecting my memories with my dad, and just everything being just connected, and I just started bawling in the car.
We found out later this pastor was actually an orphan himself. He was an orphan when an Australian missionary came and took him in. This missionary brought up this young orphan, teaching him God's love and God's word as he grew up. And this little orphan became a pastor. This pastor, he decided that I was an orphan myself, but I was fortunate enough for someone to have taken me in and just filled my life with so much love that he decided to build an orphanage himself.
When we went to a church that was just a few hundred feet from the missionary center. First we provided VBS for the children, but then after we attended service with the adults.
When they praise so passionately. Like they dance and they praise as if they're in heaven.
Even if they didn't have all that equipment and mics or anything, it was just so wonderful. It was so from the soul and from the depths of their heart.
That was the last time that we performed our skit. I was kind of happy that we performed it the last time in front of adults because it seemed like the message that the adults were able to digest and understand.
I guess some of the newer churches, they took it more as entertainment maybe, but this church, while they were watching, especially the part where Jesus comes in and blocks all the sin from the young girl, they started cheering, they started yelling.
Someone was like yelling, she was so happy, you know, to see that.
Being a part of the skit, like I got pumped up.
To see that final response.
It was very exciting to see them understand the gospel, knowing who Jesus is, knowing what sin is.
It was just so amazing. The whole service was amazing. It was just so alive and there was this deep connection. I mean, not only to each other, but as a body, this deep connection, worshiping God together.
Susanna and I started bawling because we just felt God's presence so thick and we were so happy to be united with family, with brothers and sisters that we've never met but felt like we've known our whole lives. Second time we visited the orphanage, we didn't have much time there. We wanted to just drop off the gifts as soon as possible and beat this crazy thunderstorm that was heading our way. We had to beat it back to the missionary center or else there was no way that our cars could drive into the missionary base because it's not paved there, it's just all dirt, so it would have turned into a muddy mess. And so we just dropped the gifts off and then as soon as we came out of the orphanage, wind just started to blow so hard and crazy at us and we did actually go back to the missionary base, but on the way there we just saw so many huts and houses blown down by the wind.
Destroyed.
아 여기 돈이 많네요. 가수를 많이 하세요.
Oh my god. 예배 드렸는데. Wait, no way. Oh my god.
To see a place where we were just worshiping the day before completely demolished.
The church was just broken down and there were only like a couple bricks up.
Our hearts were breaking, you know. Our hearts were truly breaking. That was our last sight of Chad as we were leaving to the airport.
I was asking God in my mind, I was just like, God, how come this church is blown down? It's such a humble church and they love you so much and we were just there.
That Sunday when we were worshiping, it was really packed. It was crowded with everyone. And they had to keep bringing in wood benches.
I felt like he was telling me that the building is not the church and the people there that attended that church are the church.
So to see that church be demolished, for some reason I instantly felt at peace because I knew they were going to make a bigger church. At first I was very saddened, but I just knew there was more hope because that church is on fire for God. They love God. You can just tell in their worship and just their services.
It's okay that we saw those last things there, because it's not just us, that God is mobilizing. God is mobilizing a whole team of His children to go over there and help the Chadians out, and even the local pastors there.
I remember when one of the last churches we went to, we had a prayer meeting with a bunch of pastors, and one of the pastors after the meeting came up to me and he said, "Thank you for coming." That really made me think, like, who am I that this older pastor is thanking me for doing not really much, and he's thanking me from the bottom of his heart. I guess that was the final moment where I was just like, God really wants me to come back here, and God really wants me to fall in love with this country.
Throughout the entire trip, I don't think it was a coincidence that many times we looked at the clock, it was 10:40. Chad exists in the 1040 window, and the 1040 window is an area in the part of the world where there lies the most unreached people groups in terms of the gospel.
And there's only like spots of Christianity in southern Chad.
I was just reminded when I saw that time just how important the work we were doing, especially in some of these villages that we went to would just appear out of nowhere, and like we're just wondering how on earth are these people hearing the gospel.
Pastor Hemi, his prayer request was that he was pointing to the Bible and he's saying, like, I would like people to love the gospel. And because I believe that while the Muslim are coming through with money and power, God is trying to use the gospel as His weapon, and it's changing one soul at a time. That's one thing I really found amazing, was that I got to see how the first churches are built.
To see that love that was passed between them, to me that was the closest thing that I had ever experienced to Christ's love for us. I really saw Jesus in them.
Although Chad is known as the dead heart of Africa, the people in Chad, they're so alive and they have so much love and so much hope to give.
So many times I told myself I knew what love was, but seeing love over there, I think really broke barriers.
If you are to love, you love and you hold nothing back. Seeing the pastors and the missionaries giving that kind of love, they could not have done that unless they knew Christ, unless they understood Jesus' love for them, and that's why they do what they receive from Christ. And in the same way, that's why we went to Chad. If it wasn't us being transformed by Jesus' love, understanding His obedience, in which our perspective we see it as sacrifice, but in Jesus' perspective it's, I'm just obeying my Father's will. If it wasn't for knowing Christ, knowing what He did for us, I don't think I would have been able to go to Chad.
Why